first of all, a huge shout out and thank you to everybody in LA. Um, what a what a pleasure, to see things coming together in the Zendo in LA. Are you not hearing me there? Tennessee? Okay. To see and hear everything coming together there, somewhat independently, as Lori and I are here up in Seattle area visiting family. Tennessee in her, I think, third run as Eno, which is the person leading the chanting. But it's really, really much more than that. And Tennessee, I'm sure you're beginning to feel that, if you didn't through the first word out of your mouth, is really the voice of Buddha, the voice of the Dharma, the voice of the sutras, the sutures through time of all of the teachings and all of the teachers. And you are that voice, Tennessee. So thank you for taking that on. Chalet there really holding down the Zendo in our absence and opening it up for guests and members, and keeping the whole thing going. And Chalet, I don't know if you were doing Jikido as well, but Melissa there on Doan. And I saw Winston this morning pitching in and making sure all the Zoom settings were right. And so thank you, Winston. And I think Scott is there, and there may be one other person I should say welcome to.
Philip. It's Philip.
Oh, hey, Philip. That was the tall person in the background. Hi, Philip. And then, of course, to the family here. We're in between Enumclaw and Crystal Mountain at Lori's sister Sydney's house, who are hosting us at the moment. And then for a few days prior to that, we were with her niece, my niece, Lori's niece, Tanya, and there's Ben and David. So we have family here with us today that's been taking very good care of us. Anyway, the Sangha has many faces. And Gabriel, I haven't met this lovely person next to you yet, but welcome.
Hello, I'm Karina. Thank you for having me.
Was that Karina?
Yeah.
Yeah, Karina, welcome. Nice to meet you, and I hope you can join us in person sometime soon. And of course to everybody else. Just so great to see everybody on screen. Paul, welcome back. Paul's working hard at his residency for chaplaincy, and spending a lot of time at hospitals and working hard, which must be especially trying right now. And maybe that's where I will start. What crazy, trying, potentially overwhelming times. And perhaps they're always like that, but and perhaps it's just me, and maybe you're all perfect centers of Zen calm. But I think it was, I'll belie my age here a little bit, but I think it was 40 years ago that I was at a Thanksgiving dinner with my first wife's family, and they always had you speak. And I was, a good pushy college student at the time. And so I wrote a piece on the US presence in Afghanistan at that time, and what did it all mean, and likening it to a game of bushkazi, which is, I think a goat head wrapped in rags and like a primitive form of polo, and how Afghanistan has always been a trying situation. And here we find ourselves 40 years later with that situation rapidly melting down. Earthquake in Haiti, 7.2 magnitude, and hundreds, I don't know what the latest count is, dead, wildfires everywhere. In California, here in Washington State, not too far away from where we are right now. The skies have cleared somewhat. It's been very smoky here in the mountains and down in Seattle. And 100 degrees in Seattle is nothing to ignore. And I think it hit 100 again in Portland.
Yep.
More than, and and then there's this beautiful little doggy. It makes everything I just said moot, right? But I mean, it's like, what do we do with all of that, and how do we deal with that? In the book we just finished reading, Ruth Ozeki's A Tale for the Time Being, some commentary on the plastic gyres out in the ocean, and just, gee, what a floating plastic rotating island the size of Rhode Island, and what do we do about that? And again, maybe spending too much time with the news, but some young woman in Indiana going, how does my trash actually get recycled? And they went and tried to find where it all goes, and it can be a little overwhelming, all of this. To put it mildly. And I certainly at times find myself there. What do we do with all of that? What is the way out? And then there's our practice, which does, potentially offer some relief from suffering, relief from the thinking mind, relief from it getting its hooks into us. At least that's what we say. And so, I kind of ask the question rhetorically here. We can answer, in person as we get a little bit later, but, what do we come here looking for? And, I had some good conversations during the week about this, it's with people. Do we come seeking peace, calm, character, the development of our own character, a touch with the sacred, with the mystical, with something larger than ourselves? Do we come seeking enlightenment, or escape, or better health? Freedom from anxiety. These are all keys to the lock that open the door of a zendo, and people walk in for all different kinds of reasons. We've talked about people who are seeking something larger, people who want to fix something in their lives, something who want to change the world or make the world better. People that come to the practice with a more didactic sense of what they already believe. And then, in the center of all of that, the testers, which, is a nice place for Zen, because we encourage everybody to, recite the sutras and do the zazen and do whatever reading and be part of this. But ultimately it comes to your experience, your direct experience of the teachings, of yourself. Who is that self, and what does it mean? And how does it connect you to the 10,000 things in the 10 directions, to use Zen language? But how does that open you up and connect you to everything? And in a large sense, that's what Zazen is about. It's a deep dive into the self, to study the self. As Dogen says, to study the self is to forget the self. Meaning that the more you start looking at who is that one, the more you start looking at who is the observer, who is it in this life that is seeing, touching, feeling, hearing, smelling. You really start looking at that, it can take you into a wide open vast empty space that is everything. That is everything. That is all the plants and all the beings and Lulu the dog and all of your family. That's why we emphasize Zazen, is that direct experience of seeking the self, which then if you're looking for mysticism, actually blasts through any definition of the self into something very, mystical and wonderful, and yet also very prosaic and grounded and just this life. So I mentioned Dogen, was a great master, Zen master. Dogen lived in the 13th century. I think he died in 1250. Eihei Dogen Zenji. Eihei-ji, the temple, still exists in Japan. And I mentioned earlier Tennessee being the voice of all time and all the practice in taking on the role of Ino. And, it is funny when I was certified to teach, my teacher, at the time, Yoshin Roshi, brought back this rakusu, from Eiheiji, which is Dogen's temple in Japan that was established. There's he's glory ringing the ink, and all of us chanting this rakusu are a direct link to Dogen, as we call him for short, the master. So, how are we to proceed? And I thought that I would, can you still hear me? I just got your connection is unstable. Okay. I thought that I would turn to Dogen to look for some answers to this. What do we do day to day? What do we do with the ingredients of our lives? And specifically to the Tenzo Kyokun, which is usually interpreted or translated as instructions to the cook. So, Kyokun meaning instructions, Tenzo loosely the cook. Now, Chalet and I have been spending a lot of time talking about this role of Tenzo as she's getting trained up to Tenzo for our upcoming session. And cook is a funny, small word for that role. And if you actually look at the Japanese characters for Tenzo, it translates more directly to seat of ceremony or master of ceremony. And as anybody who's a mother here in the room, or a father who cooks, or anybody who's prepared a meal for anybody else, that cooking can be cooking. It can be throwing things in a pot and boiling it and throwing it on the table. Or it can be something much deeper and more profound than that, which is the nurturing and caring for all of those around you. And some of us have prepared food and served food in a soup kitchen or a soup line or a food bank. And that, of course, puts another dimension on it. But, are you just cooking? Or is it something bigger than that? And conversely, Dave, when you're eating, right? Are you just feeding your body, right? Or are you taking in food that your mother or your uncle prepared, right? And then you're taking in that food, and then you're going to work and you're serving other people that are going off in their lives, right? So then the cooking and eating becomes this beautiful act of connection and nurturing and sustaining the practice. Now, the practice, whatever it is. So cook is a very small word for something very big. The Tenzo in a monastery is also one of the most senior positions. It's one of the 6 official positions. Is another one of them that keep the whole thing going. And when you're trained as a Tenzo, you're trained in a lot of the functional intricacies of preparing food for a lot of people, and also the spiritual background of it. So, in this Tenzo Kyokun, Dogen gives very specific instruction about how to wash the rice, and how to pick out the gravel from the rice. But there's also instruction on bowing 9 times, before the food is served, and reciting the Shosai Myo Kichio Dharani, the Dharani of protection, as part of offering protection to everybody who's about to take the meal. So it becomes, again, something larger. And then what about the ingredients? When we got here in Greenwater at Sydney's house, Sydney and Michael's house, I couldn't help but notice the 2 boxes, empty boxes from Imperfect Foods, and I don't know if anybody else knows or has used Imperfect Foods, but it's a network in the States that collects and distributes the less than perfect food, and you can have it delivered to your home. So the food that gets rejected by grocery stores and restaurants as not being perfect. So that could be a carrot with, 2 legs, which is always kind of amusing, right? The carrot's going to walk away, or fruit with blemishes, right? Or the lettuce that's, not quite right. And the stuff that people reject. Imperfect Foods collects all this food, and they've got a vast distribution network, and they offer it at pretty darn good prices, and it comes in a box to your home, right? And so you're now part of the supply chain of food that might otherwise be wasted. So I saw these boxes from Imperfect Foods, and Lori and I have used Imperfect Foods at different times. And as Tenzo, one of your main jobs is to make sure that all the imperfect food, all of the ingredients get used. All of the ingredients get used, and there is no waste. And that all of them get used in a way that sustains and nurtures the Sangha, the community of monks, the family. So really like a direct connection. It's called takuhatsu, okay, is when the monks would go out in Japan begging for food. And so they went out into the community, takuhatsu, and they're dressed in traditional garb, which identified them as official monks of the monastery. It's kind of like the gas guy having his ID card before he comes into your house, But they go out and beg for food and bring the offerings back to the temple. And then the Tenzo, who has this huge task of taking care of everybody, has to see what's there and see what to make of it. What meal am I going to cook? Now, it doesn't take too much of a stretch to see that this metaphor of ingredients and what meal are we going to cook applies to our lives. And this piece of writing from Dogen, written in 1237, has been lauded and referenced and written about and used over and over in that way, in that essence. What is the essence of this teaching? The essence of the teaching is what is here right in front of us. How do I use it? How do I revere it? What do I do with it? Going directly to the text, Dogen says, when you prepare food, never view the ingredients from some commonly held perspective, nor think about them only with your emotions. Bye. Thank you for joining. Bye, Dave.
See you, Dave.
You off to work?
Yeah, back.
All right, we'll see you this afternoon. Nor think about these ingredients only with your emotions. Maintain an attitude that tries to build great temples from ordinary greens, that expounds the Buddha Dharma through the most trivial activity. When making a soup with ordinary greens, do not be carried away by feelings of dislike toward them, nor regard them lightly. Neither jump for joy simply because you have been given ingredients of superior quality to make a special dish. By the same token that you do not, hang on. I lost it. By the same token, I have no idea where that went. By the same token that you don't indulge in like loving the fantastic ingredients. This is me doing my best at paraphrasing Dogen. Do not, curse or degrade or be unhappy with the lesser ingredients in front of you. What car are you driving? Where do you live? So often we're seeking something else. If only I got that $65,000 electric Tesla, well, that would be saving the planet. Let's go do that right now. And by the way, I think Teslas are amazing. There's no ding on your red Tesla, Winston. We're definitely looking that direction. But the question is like, what about right now? What about right now? All of a sudden the mini becomes the wrong car, or there's something wrong with that. What ingredients do we have right here, right now, and what do we do with them? If only we could have everybody in the Zendo together. What would that look like? Wouldn't that be great? Or if the Zendo weren't the living room there in LA, we had our own place and the altar could always be set up and we didn't have to move, that ugly Im sofa out of the way, right? Wouldn't that be great? We'd have like, the Zendo that was always there. And it would be great. But look at what's happening in the living room Zendo right now this morning. The whole thing's been produced and there's 19 of us, 20 of us, 21 of us here together talking about Dogen. I'm going to see if I can find my notes again. You do not indulge in a meal because of its particularly good taste, nor is there reason to feel an aversion toward an ordinary one. Do not be negligent and careless just because the materials seem plain. And willfully, he instructs us, hesitate to work more diligently with materials of superior quality. Your attitude towards things should not be contingent upon their quality. All right, isn't that beautiful? Take that out of the context of cooking and just put it into your life. Your attitude toward things should not be contingent upon their quality. Because what is quality? What is quality if not a judgment? What is quality if not an active action of the mind? Imperfect foods. What is imperfect about that carrot, that pear? What's imperfect about it is somebody's judgment about quality. If you're a farmer or a gardener, or a landscape designer, you quickly come to know that a weed is just a plant where you don't want it. There's really no such thing as a weed other than your definition that you don't want it there. So some people see a dandelion in the lawn and call it a weed. Other people see dandelion greens and pay good money for them at Whole Foods as salad. or when I was a kid, we used to go and collect the dandelion leaves and flowers and feed them to our pet tortoise, Ruffy Tuffy. For him, it was a feast. The same dandelions. So what determines the quality but some judgment in our head? And how do we start letting go of judgment? Zazen or meditation, whatever form that takes for you, gives you a chance to see the thoughts and catch them. So how difficult is this, I guess, is the next question. Okay, Dan, great. Don't judge things by their quality. Don't treat things according to some judgment of quality. We have all the ingredients. Because isn't that the teaching? You have everything right here, right now. It's right here, right now. Everything you've got is everything you need. You are the awakened one. Enlightenment is right here. There's nowhere to seek outside of you because there is no outside of you. Easy, right? Dogen says these things are truly just a matter of course. Yet we remain unclear of them because our minds go racing about like horses running wild in the fields, while our emotions remain unmanageable like monkeys swinging in the trees. If only we would step back to carefully reflect on the horse and monkey, our lives would naturally become one with our work. Doing so is the means whereby we turn things even. We turn things. Even while simultaneously we are being turned by them. It is vital that we clarify and harmonize our lives with our work and not lose sight of either the absolute or the practical. So this interesting little thing about we turn things, we make things happen, but at the same time, the things are making us happen. We turn things even as they turn us. And the deeper we go with the practice and the more we study the selves, the more that absolute sense of there is no turning and there's nothing to turn and there's nothing to turn us because this is just what we're doing. It's just this Dharma talk. It's just this stick of incense burning. It's just this meal to prepare in front of us, just this wood to chop, just Sydney driving Dave to Crystal Mountain where he has his job. That is the profound as well as the fundamental functional thing. Because in this practice are both that functional and the mystical. The fundamental and the absolute, the phenomenal and the absolute. And I can attest to that absolute, some people would call it mystical side of things. We had the mystical talk a few ago. It's the vision in Ranchi. I am a kid from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was raised that college was vocational school. I was raised that you're no better than anyone else. It's kind of a nice fundamental teaching, and that you make your own life and you raise yourself up by your bootstraps and whatever happens is self-determined and self-made because that's all there is, and I've stepped into priest robes and do my best to do this teaching every week and find myself in places like India, connecting with the swamis or, connecting with my brother who's a minister, and seeing God or being with Lori in Peru and connecting with the Apus in the mountain. And I've, maintained my Zen practice and that is my practice. But it can open the doorway to connection across all of these barriers and all of these traditions. So if that is what you seek, it's possible. And if you seek peace and equanimity in your life, that's also available right here, right now. Because this is it. You know what? Practice your life, practice realization. What else is there? You know, what else do I have other than what is here right now? How can I not practice it? And so when Dogen talks about collapsing, you know, the work and our lives, now in his language here, he's talking to monks in a monastery. So he's talking about the work of the Dharma, harmonizing that with our lives. So we could look at that as harmonizing the practice with our lives. But you know, that harmony is always there, except for the monkeys and horses that Dogen talked about. The monkeys and horses of our thoughts and our emotions that are always trying to grab us. When I first was learning how to deal with horses on the ranch, the horses were 4 years old and they got spooked easily. And I was working with my riding instructor and Lori was gone. And I tied my horse Spud to, you know, a post, and my instructor showed me how, and she tied one of the other horses. And we went to get the third horse, which was a mistake because a big gust of wind came up and blew a trash can, and both of the horses tied up, reared and bolted and pulled back. Rodeo actually just broke the railing. Spud, my horse, actually broke off the cedar post, but was still tied to it. And so he backed into the corral and he's swinging his head, you know, with full force, you know, of a quarter horse, swinging the lead and this post. Marsh is going, oh dear God, you know, and anybody that's worked with a horse, right? Swinging this post, you know, and here I am with my horse and he's there panicked, swinging this post. How do you approach that horse? How do you approach those emotions in your mind? How do you approach that anxiety? How do you get near enough to untie the lead without Spud breaking his leg or you getting taken out by a swinging post? It's, you know, it's back to one, folks, back to the breath, back to bringing everything into a place of center and calm, a calm that is so powerful that without saying anything, without doing anything to anybody around you, all of a sudden everything comes into harmony. And the swinging post on the end of the lead at the end of the scared horse, it all settles. And you can walk right up and untie that lead and stroke the horse's neck, and nobody gets hurt. That is harmonizing our lives with our practice, with our work. That's harmony. And that's why we practice what seems so fundamental and so boring at times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 1. You know, I'm working on this koan, I'm working on this koan, I'm working on this koan. Well, really, I'm thinking about dinner 1. I'm working on this koan. Because finding that center is the harmony of our lives and our practice. And it's always available, yet we need to practice it. Books are so much easier than Kindles for this, but I got out here and I realized I didn't have this book. In closing, in all the many monasteries located on the various mountains I have visited in Song, China, says Dogen, the monks holding the respective offices worked in their capacity for 1 year at a time. Yet they always maintained and exhibited the same attitude as the head of the community, applying that attitude appropriately to the time and circumstances. The three aspects of this attitude are to see that working for the benefit of others benefits oneself, to understand that through making every effort for prosperity of the community, one revitalizes one's own character, and to know that endeavoring to succeed and to surpass the patriarchs and matriarchs of past generations means to learn from their lives and to value their examples. Be very clear about this. A fool sees himself as another, but a wise man sees others as himself. An ancient teacher once said, 2/3 of our days are already over, and we have not practiced clarifying who we are. We waste our days in chasing satisfaction, so that even when called, we refuse to turn around. How regrettable. So anyway, a little bit of Dogen, a little bit of looking at the ingredients of our lives, a horsetail or two. And I'm just so grateful to be with all of you and everybody here, you know, and I just think that my time as Tenzo, and in all of the training that I've done and all of the training that we're doing, are the matriarchs and the patriarchs of this entire lineage. And every time you pick something up in your life or in the Zendo, if you treat it with that reverence, the practice comes to life instantly. And that calm of the fence posts coming to a rest is available to all of us. We just have to hold it that way. I realize we haven't had a lot of time together, you know, and we need more of that, because part of it I also realized in my early practice came from just showing up on Friday nights and cleaning the Zendo, being told that it was my time to clean the toilet, you know, and knowing that I was cleaning the toilet with a bunch of other people that had housekeepers at home too. But this is what we were going to do. Or climbing up on the roof and clearing the leaves out of the gutter. Or if you're up at Zen Mountain Center pouring concrete, or helping the Tenzo in the kitchen. I just invite everybody, as you go into Sunday and the rest of your week, with that next task in front of you, pick it up like it's a grain of rice being served by the Tenzo in 1237. Because it is. It truly is. Pick up that pencil. Touch the keyboard. Grab the broom. You know, strum the guitar. Use your voice like it's the voice of the matriarchs, as Tennessee is so perfectly demonstrating. All right, a little bit of time left for comments, questions. I'll stop going on. And over to any of you or anybody here with any questions. Are you my great nephew, I guess? Great nephew Ben is here. He's been asking all kinds of questions about Zen over time. We've been chatting back and forth over the months. But anyway, anybody out there or here, any questions or comments? Over to you.